Welcome back, everybody, to the Innovative Agency. Sharon Torek here with you today. We've talked a lot lately on the show with guests about, because we can't seem to avoid it, how AI is impacting the industry in various facets, right? Whether it's business development or whether it's client delivery, whatever it might be. And one thing we haven't had an opportunity to really explore, and which I'm excited to explore today, is the whole role of strategy and how you all deliver what you deliver to brands. And here to help me do that today, I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with Mike May. Mike is Chief Strategy Officer at 50,000 Feet, which is an independent agency in multiple cities in the US, but I primarily based in Chicago, right? Chicago, New York, DC.
Chicago, New York, DC are and the West Coast, Los
Got
Angeles
it.
and
Oh,
Northern
you're
California.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome, Mike. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
All right. Nice to be here.
So, first of all, tell us a little bit about your role as a chief strategy officer for the agency. What do you own in that
Yeah.
role within the agency, and how does it fit
Yep.
within what you deliver?
Sure. Sure. So my role is I'm ultimately responsible for all of the strategy product that we create for our clients,
Mhm.
within the engagements, within retainer agreements, everything, all of the strategy artifacts that we create. But I'm also responsible for internal strategy processes and products that we are creating and delivering to our clients, as well as managing the strategy team. So one of the things that has changed, I think, in the last few years, especially, is typically a CSO's role is client facing at high impact moments, but
Mhm.
not responsible so much for the day to day. And I think one of the things that's changing in the agency landscape today that I'd love to get into is how, the senior strategist role is changing now because of AI and what's expected of senior strategists that maybe wasn't expected previously. And the opportunity that creates for clients also.
Okay, well, that's a great starting point, and I think we all need to understand how the game is changing, right? Because we're becoming an industry of not making, but of creating impact, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the measurements are changing to the impact over the stuff that we're making and delivering. And
that's right.
so maybe let's start there and tell me how. Are you taking a fresh approach to how you're thinking about delivering strategy to clients or about how you're applying it to your own product development in the agency?
I am. In my role in particular, I am playing much more of a player coach model than I thought that I would when I started here about a year ago.
Okay. What
I
do you
thought
mean?
it would be more of a management and oversight and sort of team development and coaching role.
Hmm.
And the reality is that clients increasingly have an expectation to be working with senior people across the agency, across all of the agencies. And that's one of the ways that smaller independent agencies can ultimately differentiate. Um, we tend to hire more senior people because we need people who can do a range of things.
Hmm.
And um, putting those people in more prominent client-facing roles more frequently can be a differentiator. And that's one of the things that we're finding already.
Well, and it sounds to me also like it's a way of combating that constant complaint that agencies seem to hear about team swapping,
Yeah.
right? Sitting in the initial meeting with one team and then getting the agreed work scope executed on by a different team,
That's
which
right.
may be populated by folks who are not as senior or
Well, and I think that's changing because of AI, frankly, if you want to get right into it. With AI, there's really no B team. There's no need for a B team, right? So
Mhm.
you've got the ability with AI to perform a lot of the foundational tasks that go into strategy. A lot of the research piece, a lot of the synthesis, right? One of the things that I love about AI, and it's not without its challenges, and I hope we get into those as well. But one of the things that I love is that I kind of think strategy is in the shape of a bow tie, right? Where it starts really wide And
Hmm.
what you need to do is cast as wide as you can and try to get down to this tight little knot in the middle. Like that's your core strategic idea. And then once you've got that core strategic idea, then it opens back up again on the other side of the bow tie. You start to think about, okay, how do we, what are all the ways that we can bring this idea to life? What are all the channels we can put in here? What are all the platforms we can build off of this idea? What are all the campaign ideas and concepts, right? And so it widens back out. And the nice thing about AI is that it allows us to start even wider than before, right? So in the
Hmm.
past, we might do a competitive audit of the six main competitors for a brand to get an idea of what people are doing in the space and what the industry looks like. Now it's really easy to do at least a focused look at 12 or 15 or 20 competitors in the space. So you're not just looking at the direct competitors, but you're looking at indirect competitors. You're looking at future competitors, right? You're looking at beacons and analogs in other industries and pulling all of that together. And so without putting a lot more time and energy into it, we're able to begin with a broader set of data and perspectives that can only make that core idea better informed and a little crisper.
Are you finding that this is impacting client or prospective client expectations around strategic ideas earlier, maybe in the sales cycle than it would have a few years ago?
I will say that clients definitely have expectations about agencies' use of AI.
Hmm.
And one of the ongoing challenges for agencies is to make sure that expectations are actually aligned with reality. So, for
Hmm.
example, the big expectation that I think clients have is efficiency, right? And there are some clients who are actually expecting a decrease in fees because of efficiency. Because of AI, we expect you to lower your rates by 10% or 20% or 25%. And from an agency's perspective, that's the wrong way to think about it for a couple of reasons. In fact,
Hmm.
I don't like to think about AI's use for efficiency. I'd like to think of AI's use for acceleration, which
Hmm.
is not quite the same thing. The idea that I think that AI can do for agencies is not to do things faster, it's to find ways to deliver value more quickly.
So, do you find that that's in alignment with what most brands walk into the conversation expecting early or not yet?
That's the pivot, right? Like that's the conversation that you have to have. Because if they say, look, we need you to reduce your fees by 25% or whatever, we're asking all of our partners to reduce expenses
Yeah,
because leadership
which
is
our agencies are used to hearing, obviously. Yeah.
exactly. Then the other side of that is, okay, so if my revenues across the board drop by 25%, for most agencies, a 25% drop in a year of revenues no longer allows them to be a going concern, right?
Hmm.
That's catastrophic.
Hmm.
And so the conversation has to be about partnership. It has to be about um, how AI, in this case, right, can allow us to deliver more value than what you're getting now, either quicker or an expanded set of value, right, without necessarily thinking about how do we just spend less on agencies. But you have to be super intentional about how you think about AI at the agency level in order to do that. One of the things that I see strategists doing quickly is offloading things to AI and then just incorporating that into their work without adding their own perspective to it, without adding their own analytical lens to it and relying on it too heavily, which is an easy thing to do, right? When you're overburdened, you're on too many projects, it's a tool sitting right there. This will help me get out of this bind. It'll help me meet this deadline, right? But we have to remember that the reason we're hired in the first place is because we are doing something that the client can't do themselves,
Hmm.
right? Every discipline within the agency is doing something they can't do themselves. And as soon as we start giving them work that they could do themselves by using AI in the same way, then
Hmm.
we've diminished our reason to be their partner in the first place, right?
Hmm.
So, you know, when we think about integrating AI, it's always with the mind of how do we use it to deliver more value? How do we use it to be a better partner, not just how do we do things less expensive so that we can meet their need or their desire to spend less money on us.
Right, but it also sounds like what you're saying is just leading with that part of the value equation isn't really in either their best interest or the agency's best interest either. That's a very pleasant and necessary byproduct, but not
Yeah.
the starting point, right?
Right, right. And look, and the reality is that there are always clients who do some part of the strategy process themselves, right? There's a lot of engagements where they've done their own research or where
Hmm.
they have what they think is a brief. And our job is to apply our experience and our perspective and make that better, right? And figure out what part of that is worth preserving.
Hmm.
Um, a big part of the strategist's job is editing. It's understanding of all of this data, and there's even more data once you're using AI. Based on all of this, what's worth paying attention to? What do I prioritize? What do I discard? And
Hmm.
that only comes with experience and critical thinking so far.
Right, right, right. Can you share a little bit about, I know you have a sort of your own rubric or framework
Yeah.
for strategy at the agency, and for the benefit of the agency leaders who are listening to
Yeah.
this, can you talk about your approach to that?
I wouldn't call it an agency-wide rubric. It's just the way that I think about it and the way
Yeah,
that I think about it with my team. But it's really
got it.
three things. And strategists, we love frameworks. We love simple, elegant ones, and we
Yeah.
like when they have some sort of mnemonic element to them,
And
right? So,
we like things in sets of three, do we not?
and
I
we
love
do love
triangles.
threes.
Yeah,
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 we do love threes.
yeah.
So, my rubric for thinking about the role of strategy in agencies is to focus on acceleration, augmentation, and elevation. And it's a
Okay.
little forced to get uh, the triplet in there.
Got it.
But
All
I'll,
right.
I'll I'll start with acceleration, right? And it's to me, like it's what I said before. It's not about efficiency. It's not about taking an 8 week engagement and bringing it down to 6 weeks. Although that's happening. I can't tell you how many strategy discovery phases have been compressed.
Mm,
And that's typically what clients are looking for, by the way. When you put together a proposal for them and you say, this is how long it will take and this is how much it'll cost, more often than not, the pushback is not how can we save $100,000? It's how can we ship this 3 weeks sooner, right?
hmm.
And sometimes that means taking some things out. But what it should never mean is doing the same amount of work faster because you
Right,
just can't.
right.
At least not at the same level of quality. So I don't think about efficiency. I don't think about how can we use AI to perform tasks that humans would take longer to perform, even though that's what it does. I always think of how can we do that in a way that allows us to deliver value to the client more quickly. So that's the acceleration piece. And the reason I think that adds a lot of value is look, strategy fatigue is a thing. There are a lot of engagements where they want to get on with it already. And kind of the dirty secret of agency life is that I don't think most clients like strategy. I think a lot of clients,
Yeah.
it's like a cover charge they don't want to pay. What they want is to see the band, right? They want the creative director in the room and they want us to get out of the way. But the role of strategy is to inspire them with the confidence to take action in the first place, right? And
Yeah.
so if we do our job and we do it well, then when the creative directors do come into the room and they present ideas, the client is more likely to love those ideas because they've already aligned around the work that those ideas need to do as part of the strategy. But
Hmm.
the change that I've seen in the last 5 years, and it's accelerated in the last two, is their appetite for strategy is shrinking. They want less time spent on it. They want to get to that value faster. And so, in a way, thank God for AI because it actually allows us to satisfy that need for value more quickly that began before AI was
Right.
was as prominent as it is now. It gives us an
Yeah.
opportunity to do that.
That's a good point because what I was about to say before you just made that clarifying statement was that, gosh, that sounds like a real speed bump in the whole evolution of changing from charging what you make versus
Right,
charging for your thinking, which is
right.
where agencies, at least in my view, need to go to be
Yes.
successful onward. But
Yeah.
your point seems to be that no, you do need to evolve to selling thinking, not stuff, but
Right.
you also need to be able to do it more quickly
That's right.
because
That's
clients
right.
don't have an appetite for waiting.
but it still has to do the same work for the client that it would otherwise. So let me give you an
Yeah,
example on research, right?
yeah,
One of the most time-consuming phases in any strategy phase is if you have to do primary research, go out and talk to people, right? Whether it's through a survey or one-on-ones or focus groups or something else.
right,
And that takes between 4 weeks and 32 weeks. And it's also a black hole. You just don't know how long it's going to take sometimes, right? And
right.
so when you're building out a project, that's always a source of some anxiety. Is this going to throw the whole project off kilter? And it's really hard to put that in front of the client where we say, now we do all this work and we get smart so we know what questions to ask. And then we're going to ask questions for 8 weeks. And then we'll come back. And it's this yawning gap, right, in
Yeah,
the project where we're just sort of the client feels like they're just sitting on their hands and nothing is happening.
right.
Um, AI does offer the ability to streamline that, right? With synthetic audiences and synthetic research. So you can get to those answers more quickly. But the caveat is that, look, the job of strategy isn't to be right. It's not to be Six Sigma accurate in what you're doing. Its job is to inspire your clients with the confidence to act, to make decisions. And if you can compress that strategy, that research phase from 8 weeks to 2 weeks or 1 week because you're using synthetic research, but the client doesn't believe in the research, if they just don't find it persuasive because of the process that you use to generate it, you actually haven't saved any time at all because
Right.
later when you get to the rest of the strategy and then the ideas that fall out of that strategy, they're not going to have the same confidence in them because they don't believe that that research is true. So it's not just about what are all the ways we can shorten the timeline. We have to make sure that we're still doing the work we need to do, which is be a partner to our clients and keep them moving forward.
So how are you throwing the right amount of humanity in that loop to make sure that you've got the right cocktail of use of technology, AI in this case, and
Yeah.
human insight before you
Yeah.
deliver a recommendation to your client?
So one of the ways that my team uses it is as a substitute colleague. Um, we don't think of AI as a tool. We don't think of it as like this purpose-built thing that does a certain part of it. What most people do is they use it as a research associate and also a thought partner and even a chief of staff, right?
Mhm.
Like somebody who knows as much as they do about the project and the world and all of human knowledge, right? Um, but can iterate with them on how to get to the next level.
Mhm.
Most agencies uh, have strategists, in my experience, have strategists working by themselves.
Mhm.
And, there are some strategists who can spend years, really, almost their whole careers working by themselves on most projects. And the nice thing about AI is that it does afford you a thought partner in a way that a lot of people haven't had them before. So developing the skill to actually use it that way is sometimes a new experience for people, but it can make the experience more gratifying. And that's also something that can accelerate value because when you have a thought partner, you're unburdened from having lightning strike on demand, right? You can talk, you can work through things, and having somebody who's joining that conversation helps you get to those ideas bigger. It's like how creative teams work, right? I've always been envious of creative teams because, the strategist works alone for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 8 weeks, and then he hands it over or she hands it over to the creative team, and it's a copy lead and an art lead, supported by a creative director, right? And they're all collectively trying to make this a bigger idea and how do we bring this to life?
Mhm.
And I think AI allows strategy teams to replicate some of that magic in a way.
I have to say that is the first. I haven't had the argument presented to me exactly like that so far,
We're
and
just lonely and we want someone to talk to.
yeah, I no, I get that, and that makes me both hopeful and also concerned, but in ways that have nothing to do with marketing agencies or the
Yeah.
law or any of it. But I hear you, and
Yeah.
if it's giving strategists the feedback that spurs them on to do more creative work, that will eventually be vetted by the humans that have to turn that into the campaigns
Yeah.
or the ideas that get out into the world, then I can totally see the value there.
Well, and look, and we all have unique brains. There are a lot of strategists
Right.
who, when are faced with two or three things at a time, get completely paralyzed. And it's
Yeah.
really hard to get any of them done because there's this sense for some people that it's just overwhelming. And how can you do any of it when what's the point? But having this thought partner you can just go to and start to talk and
Hmm.
work through it and develop a process where you bring them up to speed and bounce ideas off of them. It's a small step that leads to momentum more quickly, and it diminishes that feeling of being overwhelmed because you know you have help.
Yeah.
I mean, as
Well,
dystopian as
you
that
can
is,
iterate a lot faster too.
yeah,
Yeah, I can
yeah.
see that.
You get started faster and you finish faster.
Got it.
Yeah,
All right, so that's acceleration.
that's the
So
acceleration.
yeah, let's move on to the next point of the
So the
triangle.
next one is augmentation. And so what I think about with augmentation is it's sort of the counterpoint of acceleration, right? If acceleration is not just about being efficiency, augmentation is this piece about how do we deliver more value?
Hmm.
And, you know, whenever you're thinking about AI, it should be with that in mind. It's not just how do I make this faster? It's what does this allow me to do, right? Or what can I do with AI that I couldn't do otherwise? So, you know, one example is the one that I gave you previously, right? On the competitive analysis, where we have time in, you know, in um, the last world to do a competitive analysis on 6 or 8 companies. That's what we're
Hmm.
scoped for. That's how much time we have, right? And AI allows us to expand that exponentially if we choose to, right?
Right.
And so that's a way that we can add value. And there's other ways of adding, you know, of using AI agents, for example, that we're exploring to um, pull what's happening across the industry. What are all of the news items in the industry relevant to their competitors? Have an AI agent pull all of those together, kind of like a really smart Google News alert, right? That's
Mhm.
trained on what's important to this project, the scope of this project, and what's important to this agency. What are 8 things or 10 things that have come together this week that the strategist can then take a look at and say, here's what I want to share with the client. So other ways of using it to make us smarter, to help us understand their business better, to help us figure out what the levers are for their business, and to add value along that line, you know, to be more of a partner. And, you know, you never get to an increase in partnership by being done faster and then walking away. It's staying with them, it's being connected to them, it's every touch point creates some value and is worth their while.
Mhm. Are you noticing that brands notice the augmentation? That they know that are they noticing that they're getting richer, deeper insights or maybe a broader swath of strategic ideas?
It's I don't know that I would go that far. I don't have,
Okay.
you know, I've never had a client say this is better than what you did 2 years ago. Um,
Fair.
but you know when you're building a partnership with a client, right? There's
Yeah.
evidence of that. When, you know, when the clients are texting you directly, right? When they ask for your opinion on something that's outside of the scope of the project because they value the way your brain works, things like that. And I'm seeing evidence of that within my team, things that are happening along those lines.
And to that point, do you feel like this is enabling the agencies to have a little bit more freedom to engage with the business of their clients at a higher level, to be more of a business partner to them versus just
Yeah.
focusing on the marketing or sales component of what the brand is about?
That's always the hope, right? That's what we
Yeah,
always try to do. How do you get out from being a vendor to being a partner, right?
right.
Um, and it's not that AI allows us to do that directly as much as it unburdens us from some things so that we can focus on the higher order opportunities and problems that the business is facing, right? If we're spending 2 weeks scraping websites for, you know, a competitive audit, and now AI can do that for us, we can spend 2 weeks getting smart about other things that deliver higher order value as part of this engagement and show that we can think differently about their business and they can trust us on that.
Got it. Yeah. Well, and I can totally see the value in that from the perspective of organic growth opportunities, right? Because if you're able to peek into the different corners and nooks and crannies of your client's business, you can extract other ways you can add value, and those are all potential business opportunities for
Well,
the
and
agency.
And so much of that is just helping them see who you are, right?
Yeah.
Helping them see who you are as people, how your brain works. I have this hypothesis about hiring, and it's whether you're hiring a person or you're hiring an agency or a firm. It's easy to think that what we're looking for is the unicorn. We're looking for this candidate who's going to take the team to the next level. We're looking for this agency that's like nobody else we've ever worked with. And that's a great and noble and laudable place to start. The reality, I think, when the decision actually comes, is that most people in that position to make that hire don't want to make a mistake. You're governed by not screwing it up more than you are
Right.
this desire to find that unicorn, right?
Well, that explains the holdco hold on the brands that they work with. Is it nobody feels like they were going to get fired for choosing a holdco agency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always been part of it. But part of the reason for that is, look, if you've been working with them for so long, that you're kind of a known quantity. And so you may not be perfect, but at least they know who you are. And one of the things that I like about anything that allows me to spend more time thinking about higher order problems and having more direct contact with the client about meaningful things is
Hmm.
that they get a better chance of seeing how my brain works, how my team's brain works. And when that next opportunity comes along, they have greater confidence that bringing us over for that is not a mistake. And
Hmm.
that's what we're trying to get to. Make it part of it is we want to make it easy for them to say yes. We also want to make it hard for them to say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Or to change course and start from square one again. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love everything about this point of the triangle so far in terms of the ability to humanize strategy or the work that the agency is doing in general for the
yeah,
brand
yeah,
because it's creating more opportunities and bandwidth for the human interaction that enables the brand to see what other value the
yeah,
agency and the people who work there can bring, which I think
yeah,
is good for all independent agencies.
yeah. And that's the third piece. That's the elevation piece,
I was
right?
just getting
It's
there. Okay, great.
yeah, and that's
Elevation.
right. And that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to have more meaningful conversations with our clients. We're trying to solve higher order problems, and that comes from knowing their business more intimately. One of the real challenges in this environment where timelines are compressed is it's hard to become an expert on a client's business in 4 weeks.
Hmm.
You just don't have the language, the vocabulary, you don't have the nuance, you just don't have the institutional knowledge. You can achieve kind of pigeon fluency, but that's about it, right?
Hmm.
But if you're spending that 4 weeks with a robot thought partner whose job it is to make you smarter about the industry and who you're iterating with, and you're spending more time with your client, and you can elevate every one of those deliverables to focus not just on what's the widget that you asked for, but what's the business problem we're trying to solve,
All right.
and talk to them at that level, then I think that makes a big difference. So even if you have that truncated timeline, there is an opportunity to elevate those interactions in a way that there wasn't before. And that's a big change. I mean, this compressed
Yeah.
timeline has been happening for years. It's been really hard up until recently to feel like you're a partner to a brand because unless you've been working with them for 6 months or a year, it's really hard to understand their business well enough where you can actually be of value to them.
Right.
Yeah, you can have perspective, right? And that's one of the things that agencies do is yeah, I know I'm here, I'm talking to, Boeing, but I'm going to talk about Home Depot because I work with them and I can apply that process that they use to what you're doing. And that's useful, but that's not the same thing as knowing Boeing and what they're actually going through.
That's so true. And no matter what a brand says about whether that is or is not important, it's always important, even when they don't come forward with it as the reason why you didn't win a pitch or an RFP
Yeah.
or why they put your account into review or whatever it might be. It's always important, I
Well,
think.
and I think it goes back to that point of not wanting to make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
And so agencies often pitch themselves that we can do anything. We can do everything from brand work to production work and everything in between, right?
Mhm.
And we work with CPG and entertainment and B2B and whatever. And part of the reason agencies do that is because they want to make sure that every potential client sees themselves somewhere in their capabilities in their case studies, right?
Hmm.
But the reality is that if you're motivated by not making a mistake, you actually want to hire the agency that is uniquely qualified to solve the problem, the very specific singular problem that you have.
Hmm.
And the more of yourself and your company you see in them, the better, right? So I think a lot of clients are looking for specialization and a lot of agencies are resisting it because if you niche down too far, you've really narrowed your client pool
Yep.
so much. But I get the psychology behind it, right? If you, I don't know, tear your rotator cuff and you have to go to an orthopedic surgeon, you want to find the surgeon who has done this procedure so many times that it bores them,
A hundred
right? You
percent.
don't want to find an ankle doctor who says, you know what? I've been super interested in shoulders. I would love to try this, you know?
No interns here. No interns needed here. No, 100%. I agree with you. And look, I'm a true believer. I have, I personally built a business focused on one industry. So, I this is the choir right here you're talking to, but I also know lots of agencies, really successful indie agencies, maybe the larger of the smalls, if you will, that feel as if their diversity of client roster, if you will, is a true strategic advantage. And
Yeah.
I've never been persuaded that that's the case for a small agency, but that's not a point of view that's universally accepted in the industry.
Yeah.
So,
I can argue both sides of it, right? And different
yeah,
things work for different agencies. And I
yeah,
understand why, why particularly in B2B, we resist the strategic decision around nichification, right? I
right.
get why we do. Um, to bring this back to my other point, it's if clients want to see themselves, if they want that expertise, having those higher order conversation and more time to think specifically about what matters to this client gets us to the level where we as people can be thought partners to them as people
Hmm.
more quickly so that even if they're a healthcare company and our expertise is in law firms, if they do give us the business, at some point they're going to realize, oh, I actually don't need a healthcare specialist because I like the way they think and they understand me,
Right,
even if they don't understand my industry as well yet. It's
right,
they see another part of their business and their problem in themselves
right,
in the agency that way. And that's what we have to get to, right? It's that familiarity and that absence of negatives or uncertainty.
right. Well, what I love about this rubric of acceleration, augmentation, elevation is that it is something that an agency, wherever they are in their journey, right? If you're a $500,000 agency or you're a $20 million agency, that's a framework that you can use to talk about strategy internally and with clients that applies at any scale. And I'm
Yeah,
always a fan of ideas like that.
I think so. And one of the things that I try to do is to make sure that the way that my team thinks about strategy is not just what do we do for the client? It's
Mhm.
how does this add value for the agency as well? I really believe strategists can be a growth engine for agencies just for a couple of reasons. One is we are trained to think about business problems, right? Which
Mhm.
makes us better able to connect with what's happening for the client. We also show up in the project early, right? So we are part of the team that builds that initial relationship with the client. And the elevation or the altitude of those conversations can really dictate the tone of the rest of that relationship. If we come in as peers and we understand their business and we are accelerating the value that we are giving them with every single deliverable and every single touch point, and we're having those higher order conversations, they trust us more. The ideas get to be bigger. We can do a little more bold work with them, and it changes the way they think of us. We put ourselves in a position of being thought of as a partner and not just a vendor.
Talk a little bit about, if you can, the way that you, what's your approach to leading internal strategy at the agency for the agency's growth, as opposed to that of, any client that you might work with? Are you treating the agency as another client? Do you have a different approach or framework that do you adjust your framework at all? Or talk a little bit about your strategy, how you develop strategy for the agency itself as a business.
So that's a little different in that even though strategy is in my title, I'm part of a leadership team where we
Yeah,
all approach it as peers, right? And
right.
and, and we look at it a little bit differently. But I think we think about it the same way, right? We
Mhm.
understand that it's about delivering value in ways that are unique to us in a way that we can only do, or not only, but a way that we can defensively do and own, right? That actually is meaningful to the client. And whether we're talking about AI or what clients to work with or what RFPs to respond to or anything else, it's kind of through that same lens, which is um, how can we add value here, right? What is our right to add value and how is it we're going to do that? And how can we communicate that and get credit for it early enough in the process for it to make a difference?
Got it. And what's your take on how business models for independent agencies need to evolve in terms of their pricing, their packaging, how they go to market and actually earn money?
I That's an enormous question.
You're
Well, I,
welcome.
I think and and I want I'm
Land
gonna
the plane, Mike, land the plane.
I'm I'm gonna pivot it a little bit. At first, I want to point out that like I'm not setting myself up to be an expert here. I'm sharing
Yeah.
my journey
No,
on
no, I'm just asking you for your point of view
what
as
to use
someone
with
feet on the ground in an
AI.
indie
Yeah.
agency.
But with in this context, right, particularly around what's happening with AI and how that's impacting independent agencies, smaller agencies, right? There are parts of it that make me really nervous. Not as somebody at an independent agency, but as sort of a citizen of the planet,
Yeah.
right? Because, like I said before, smaller agencies can be a little top heavy, and AI allows us to be top heavy in a way that's more profitable than it was before, which is great,
Hmm.
right? Um, a lot of the lower order foundational tasks are being performed by the robots. And our job is to use our experience and our expertise and our perspective and our wisdom to edit, to add value, to know what questions to ask, to know how to structure things, and to take this analysis and turn it into insight that's meaningful to the client, right?
Right.
And we can do that because we spent 5 and 8 and 10 years doing the foundational tasks. What
Sure.
happens in 5 and 8 and 10 years when you don't have someone who spent time doing that foundational work and understanding how strategy is shaped and how it works, who then has to take that same level of analysis and doesn't have the wisdom or perspective or experience to figure out, is this brilliant or is this crap? Because I can't tell.
Well, and that's a real risk because entry level opportunities are going to diminish. And so
Exactly.
the way you get that experience is, I don't know, anybody's guess, right?
Yeah. And I get why agencies do it now, right? We have to do it because of the environment that we're in. But at the same time, read your Kant and the categorical imperative. If we all do it, if every agency stops hiring junior people and giving them a pipeline and giving them those foundations, in a very short period of time, we are not going to have anybody under 50
Hmm.
who can do the kind of work that needs to happen. There's going to be this really big gap in skill sets. And that means we're going to have to rely on AI for now what agencies can deliver as unique value. And as soon as AI begins to do that, there's no reason for agencies.
Hmm. So in the meanwhile, how are you adjusting how you talk about your business model with clients, while guarding sort of the agency's necessary profitability?
We don't talk about AI as strategic differentiator.
Right.
And I don't think it really should. I think every agency, every business needs an AI strategy, just like 25 years ago, every business needed a digital strategy, right?
Right.
But
But are you packaging your services any differently or pricing any differently as a result of whatever behind the scenes? tools
We
that are
are,
being used.
we are, I wouldn't say we're pricing any differently. I would
Mhm.
say we are being mindful about how we can add more value whenever we can, without it costing us a lot of money to build that deeper partnership. So the engagements themselves aren't looking that different, except timelines are being compressed as they always are.
Right.
But we are figuring out how do we include more touch points and even more deliverables in that compressed timeline so that even though we're spending less time with the client, we can be delivering value throughout the whole thing and they can see the partnership that we're bringing.
I love it. That's a great place to drop the mic, Mike. I have really enjoyed, we don't talk much about strategy as a discipline enough in agencies, but I think walking through your framework and also getting your point of view on how AI is expanding the
Yeah.
opportunities within strategy, it's an important conversation because it is the foundation of whatever recommendations we make to clients that turn into the services that we deliver to them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And look, we need to take a long view of it also because it's a double-edged sword. The opportunities it gives us today are liabilities we could be looking at in the future if we're not super intentional about making sure we're still delivering unique value.
right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a balance, risk and opportunity. I've been
Yep.
saying that for a couple of years now, because obviously we talk a lot at our firm about risk management for agencies when it comes to AI, but it is a
Yeah.
balance,
Yep.
opportunity versus, yeah. Well, Mike, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I want to
Yeah.
thank you
Of
for
course.
sharing your expertise with us. And if folks want to learn more about 50,000 feet or want to see your thought leadership, where are some good places for them to do that?
Our website has a great insight section and a newsletter. It's at 50,000feet.com. All words, no numbers.
Awesome. All right. Mike May, 50,000 feet. Thank you so much for joining us today on the
My
Innovative
pleasure.
Agency. And
Thanks for
thanks
having me,
everyone
Sharon.
else for joining us too. And we will see you on the next episode. And until then, everybody stay well.